Hello, my name is Alexander, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the Tuesday World Meditation. You are joining me from my home in Stockholm, which is the capital of Sweden. This sacred time and space is devoted to our shared practice of entering stillness together and of giving together. Let us first surround and protect ourselves with the love and grace from God. Before we begin, I would like to share a passage from the New Message about practice. I'm going to read from the Revelation Preventing Collapse and the Wars of Desperation. This revelation was received in 2009. If humanity continues on its current trajectory, it will deplete the world beyond restoration in 40 years. I repeat, if humanity continues on its current trajectory, it will deplete the world beyond restoration in 40 years. And in the time in between, you will face such calamitous instability and even the collapse of nations. Do not think that technology alone will resolve these problems. There must be a change of heart, a change in the way people live, particularly amongst the wealthy nations, an emphasis on simplicity, an emphasis on self-sufficiency. As energy resources decline or become more unavailable, people will have to become more regional and local in their emphasis, which means their resources will have to come from sources that are closer at hand. This is a complete change in emphasis for many nations in the world today. This will be driven not by ethics or morality as much by absolute necessity. Here, war becomes unthinkable because it garners no real advantage. War was always a fool's pursuit, except in rare cases, where one had to defend one's nation against invading armies. But war for conquest of resources now will produce consequences that are far more costly than any benefits that can be achieved for any group or nation. This is a practical matter now, as well as a moral and ethical issue. People will have to use less and become more self-reliant. Overconsumption here is the engine of war, requiring your nation now to seek resources beyond its own lands, resources that it must acquire at any cost, generating intervention and deception and manipulation of other peoples and nations. Yet this emphasis will not be given up so easily. Perhaps humanity will have to face a series of tragic calamities in order to persuade it that it must change its approach and establish a different system and emphasis. Intelligent races change based upon recognition, and races that are exercising less intelligence learn based on tragic consequences. Therefore, people must have a greater vision here. They must look beyond tomorrow. They must look into the future on the horizon of life to see what is really coming. They must have the courage and the determination to face things, to face times of change and great uncertainty. Continuing to emphasize growth and the wonders of technology will be self-defeating, as they are even today self-defeating. Soils around the world will have to be rejuvenated, not by technology, but by biological rejuvenation, or they will fail humanity's needs in the future. Rivers will have to be cleaned up. Lakes will have to be cleaned up. Water is precious. It is precious in so many places in the world and will become ever increasingly so all around the world as water resources become scarce in highly populated regions. Food production will be interrupted and even destroyed in large nations due to violent and unpredictable weather. This is occurring already in many places, affecting the lives of people all around the world. The great challenge for humanity here on Earth is how it will feed and care for its people. It will not be who can become rich and make money by doing nothing. That is a fool's paradise. And it is actually to your benefit that you are coming to the end of this great and foolish endeavor. In essence now, besides the moral and ethical problems regarding human conflict, which are real and substantial, you simply cannot afford war. It will cost you too much. It will cost everyone too much. It has always cost everyone too much. Now you cannot afford it. But that does not mean it cannot happen and will not happen if great effort is not exercised to prevent the conditions that will make war inevitable. If people are hungry, they will not be reasonable or rational or accommodating. If people are losing their forms of self-sufficiency, you cannot expect them to behave in an orderly, sensible, or productive manner. This is the great risk. This is the risk of war beyond the assertions of power by one nation over another, or by historical or religious differences, or long-standing grievances between nations and groups. That will be a war of utter desperation, a war of terrible consequences, a war that would be very difficult to extinguish. It is in this new world you are entering, a world in decline, that wars of desperation will become increasingly possible and can only be thwarted and prevented by the wise and ethical maintenance of resources and distribution of resources. Eventually, humanity will have to find humane and ethical ways to limit its population, but you are not there yet. Eventually, humanity will have to change its entire relationship with the world, but you are not there yet. The emphasis here is practical, as well as moral and ethical. The wealthy nations will have to encourage simplicity and self-sufficiency in an ever-increasing manner. Those who are wealthy will have to use their wealth to help other people in very direct and significant ways. Many luxuries will have to be set aside because the resources will be much more important to be used in other ways. Instead of buying the new car or the beautiful jewelry, you support a village halfway around the world. Instead of the endless acquisition of things you do not really need, you make sure that food is reaching the people who have the greatest need for it. Instead of the endless indulgence in one's personal beauty and health, your emphasis becomes helping people, feeding people, serving people who have the greatest needs. Please join me now in a 30-minute stillness practice, and take whatever time you need to be with your step, and then enter into stillness when you're ready. Nasinobare Koran. While we're in this place of stillness together, I would like to share a passage from the new message speaking about the messenger. And I'm going to read from the Revelation the story of the messenger. And this revelation was received in 2009. Today, we shall tell the story of the messenger. It is a story that holds great power and meaning if it can be comprehended. For the messenger is no ordinary person. Though he appears to be ordinary on the outside, and because he is a humble man, he does not exalt himself in any way. He seeks not recognition, but a deeper connection with those who are destined to meet him and to receive God's new revelation. In this sense, he is understated and will remain silent with others. His proclamation is not of himself, but of the revelation. For that is why he has come. That is his reason for being in the world. However, for most of his life so far, he was not aware of this. For his calling came later in life, at a time when he was prepared to receive it and to begin the long preparation that would be required to prepare to receive the revelation and then to receive the revelation itself. 40 years it would take to do all of this. 40 years of being available, of treading the wilderness without a certain outcome, without realizing the significance of his endeavor. 40 years without other serious obligations beyond his family. 40 years to develop the trust and the confidence and the allegiance and the integrity that would be needed to become the messenger. Before he was sent into the world, the angelic host prepared him and placed deep within his mind the awareness and the understanding that he would later bring into the world knowledge and wisdom from the universe, from the most advanced races in the universe. An understanding of the future of the world and where humanity is heading in its evolution, and all of the great hazards and risks associated with this. A greater understanding of human relationships that would give him a greater maturity as he would grow up in the world. These are all placed deep within him, beneath the surface of the mind, later to be discovered, later to emerge, and later to resonate with the revelation itself. For the revelation would not be foreign to him because of what has been given to him before he came into the world. He was sent to a family, a conservative family, living in America, a family that would have no notion of his greater destiny and greater comprehension. There, he would grow up with a minimum of influences from the world, insulated and sheltered from the tragedies and corruption of the world around him. He would grow up in a family with 2 older brothers and with an ill father, a father who would otherwise have had undue influence upon him. It was setting the stage for something in the distant future to emerge. He would go through school, graduate from the university, and the only awareness he would have is that he had a greater and very unusual destiny and purpose in the world. He was restrained from giving himself to any career or to any relationship, restrained from committing his life before the revelation could occur. During this period, he would learn a great deal about the condition of the world and about human relationships. He would meet many people and taste the sorrows and pleasures of this world to a certain extent, but always being withheld for something greater. For this, he would have to develop trust that his life was not being lost or wasted, and the presence was only with him to the extent that it could maintain his true direction and aim his life towards the sacred rendezvous that would happen much later. When he was 32 years old, we presented ourselves to him, and the initiation began. An initiation that would alter everything about his life. And yet, because of who he was and what had been given to him, the resonance would be there. Our presence and our purpose would not be foreign to him, only shocking and new and uncertain. Later, he would meet his great partner, his wife, who would journey with him through all the difficult and formative years that would be required for him to prepare for his greater role in life. His son would emerge soon thereafter, and he too would have a greater destiny with his father. Others would come to join him as he began his long preparation. Not all of them would be able to stay with him, however. Some would falter and fail by the wayside, or could only provide support for a very short time. Yet his true companions would begin to arrive as he would make progress in his preparation. When he was 40 years old, he was given the steps to knowledge, the great teaching of the revelation, the book of practices. And he would be prepared to receive this in a very short time, under extraordinary circumstances. This would begin another stage in his preparation to be the messenger. But even at this age, he would not yet know of his destiny and his future role. For these things cannot be revealed too soon, or the person can become terrified or overwhelmed and withdraw or seek escape. So the realization of his destiny and his significant role in the world would only be given incrementally as he made progress. During this time, he tried to have others be with him in his inexplicable journey. But few could join him, beyond his wife and son and a few other individuals. For who can travel the road of mystery and maintain their health and well-being and stability in the world in the process? For Marshall to be able to become the messenger, he would have to have a foot in both worlds. A foot in the real world of human interactions, human relationships, and the difficulties and complexities of relations between nations. He would have to see things that were very troubling. He could not hide in a preferential world, believing in only happy things or beautiful things, or spiritual things. He would have to have a foot in the mystery, deeply anchored there, so that the challenges and the temptations of the future would not take him out of his role and purpose. Who in the world can understand these things? Who in the world has ever met the messenger or can comprehend the mystery and the power of his presence in the world? Many people will simply want things from the messenger. Miracles, dispensations, favors. They want to be healed. They want to be blessed. They want to be enriched. They want to be rescued. They want to be saved. They do not care who he is, as long as he can provide these things. And then they will believe, but only to receive, you see. His journey, therefore, would be lonely, isolated, beyond the range of even those who were sent to accompany him and to assist him. He would have to live in two worlds, bridging two realities. So very unlike each other they are. Who can do this without losing their mind or falling apart or being seduced by darker forces in the world or being overtaken by tragedy and loss and deprivation? It has been a very long road to travel, a very challenging road with many hazards, but the messenger has arrived at his true destination. Let us take a few moments to be with Marshall and send him our love and our strength. Now see if there are others in the world or in your life who need to receive this strength as well. And if so, spend a moment sending strength or another quality to these individuals. Nasi no Baba Koram. Thank you all for coming.